Hi guys, today we're going to be revising GCSE PE. We're going to be focusing on the aerobic and anaerobic respiration systems, and we're going to be focused particularly on the Edexcel GCSE PE syllabus. So this is going to be a really quick video. It's not very detailed and difficult exam questions, and most marks are usually between 1 and 3 marks, so it shouldn't be too difficult and it'll be a quick revision session. So the key thing is we're going to cover definitions. You don't necessarily need to know the definitions word for word, but you do need to understand them to be able to explain what these two energy systems are focused on. We are going to look at some equations which are very basic. We're going to look at the sources and the impact of oxygen and the role of oxygen in the two systems. We're going to look at the byproducts and then a brief sports explanation. Now, when we're revising these exam questions, the key things that you need to remember when you're analysing the question is: what is the source of the energy? Is oxygen used, yes or no? And what is the byproduct? So these are the key scientific points you're going to need to remember. So as we go through, make notes on those areas. So the first area we're going to look at are the definitions, and we just need to know these definitions. Like the word respiration, okay, it's a scientific word. You'll probably have covered it in your GCSE science revision, and respiration is where we basically create energy from glucose at a cellular level. Okay, so it's the sort of the process of creating energy by breaking down glucose, and that is what respiration is. Now, this can be either aerobic or anaerobic. So if we're talking about aerobic, in any circumstances, we are talking about a movement or exercise that the performer has enough time to utilize the oxygen. So the process happens with the presence of oxygen. And if we're talking about anaerobic, it is without the presence of oxygen. There is no oxygen in the respiration. So we can have anaerobic respiration, and we can have aerobic respiration. So we're going to start with aerobic respiration, and you may be shown a diagram like this, or you may have a table where you have bits missing out, so some of these areas missing out. So the first thing you might be asked to is justify why this equation of glucose plus oxygen equals, or it results in carbon dioxide, water and energy. Why is it aerobic? And the key word we're looking at is oxygen is present, and that makes it aerobic. So if you're having to break it down, that's the word you're going to be looking for, is oxygen. Is it there or is it not there? So the areas that we're going to focus on as well, you might get asked questions on what are the energy sources for both aerobic and anaerobic. So glucose is the energy source for both. Glucose is also known as glycogen when it's stored in the muscles. Now, if this exam question does come up for both of them, you can't put glucose for both. So in this circumstance, if it's aerobic, you can talk about fat as being one of the sources of energy for the aerobic system. Glucose is one of the sources, but like if it is asking for both, don't put glucose for two of them. But use fat for aerobic if it's asking for both. If it's just asking for one, glucose is fine. Now, the byproduct means what is generated as a result of the chemical processes, and we are looking at carbon dioxide, CO2, and water. So carbon dioxide is released and we breathe that out, or and water is released where we breathe that out as well, or we can even sweat it out. So and finally, when we're looking at sports examples, we're really looking at very low impact activities or something that is more endurance based. So jogging back into position in a game or walking back into position in game is aerobic because the athlete has time to breathe in the oxygen and utilize the oxygen. It could be a break in play where an athlete is recovering. You could, for example, in a game of tennis or something like that, say if they're playing a long rally which goes on for a duration of time, where they're able to breathe in and utilize the oxygen. Okay, so the final part of this quick revision session, I told you it'd be quick, is the anaerobic. And when we're talking about anaerobic, you may be shown a diagram that looks like this, with glucose on one side. Notice there is nothing else there. and it results in lactic acid producing energy. So it is anaerobic because we don't have the presence of oxygen. So if you get an exam question saying justify why this is shown as anaerobic, it's because there is no oxygen. You could say that it's also that lactic acid is produced as a byproduct of the anaerobic energy system. So again, if we look at what the energy sources are, which could be a question on its own, could be a table and fill in the gaps, the energy source is glucose. Okay, now remember what I said, if it's asking for both anaerobic and aerobic, use glucose or glycogen for the anaerobic one, and then use fat for the aerobic one. The byproduct is lactic acid. So that burning pain in your muscles that builds up from too much CO2, that's lactic acid. And a sports example is really anything that's explosively powerful. So you could have sprinting movements, and you talk about sprinting in a game, jumping, any jumping movements in a game. Tennis could be serving. You could have like a goalkeeper diving, an athlete taking a shot put throw. Anything that is short and explosive. Now, like I say, these exam questions are about 2 to 3 marks maximum. So it's a really quick revision video. Just make sure we know the difference between anaerobic and aerobic. And good luck.